Action, 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 right? This is the AllStar MMA live show. Once again, we're back Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. We might switch up the time in the future, but Sunday night is the best night to talk about fights because it's still fresh in your mind and it's before all the other shows go live as well. You know what I mean? So you guys could join
Monday
us
mornings.
and chat shit about whatever happened over the weekend. You know, there was UFC. Of course, we'll get into that. There was Bellator as well. Was there any other major events over the weekend that you guys remember?
MMA
Nah,
wise, nah.
not
Jake
MMA
Paul,
wise.
Nate Diaz, was that this weekend?
No,
Weekend
no, no.
before, but it was
Uh,
AJ and
Oh, that's right. I didn't
Salinas
even know.
boxing. Then there was Valdez and Navarrete boxing. BKFC.
yeah, BKFC. I think that was the most notable one. Dobson becoming the first flyweight bare knuckle world champion. It's pretty cool.
There you go, man. There's a little bit of everything for everybody, right? Something for you if you like MMA with the gloves, if you like boxing, if you like boxing without the gloves, you got bare knuckle. But today we'll focus on the MMA stuff. You know, nothing too crazy happened at BKFC, but shout out to Dotson. The dude is made for BKFC, right? His hands are super fast, his
Fast.
feet so fast. It's just like if he lands on you with no gloves and the impact is just gonna put you out. And he's already known for knockout power. So just I hope Dodson goes on forever, man. Asian roots. Shout out to my Asians. I think he's like part Filipino. If you look at the hair, you know what I mean? The hair, it tells you, you know, it tells you got that
Giveaway.
sideshow bob hair. You know
Yo,
what I mean? So, you know,
giveaway.
he got a little bit of little sprinkle of Asian in him. But yeah,
No.
shout out to him and everybody else doing their thing. J Spec, the league, go in there in the descriptions. You can download the app, join the league over here with JSpec, win some prizes, autograph memorabilia. Sickles on there. I'm making my picks as well. Last week, not too bad. You know what I mean for myself. The week before, it was phenomenal. You know what I mean. I just it's all about luck. To be honest with you, no one really knows what they're doing. You do have all of these handicappers out there that like watch tape after tape and look at strategies and these guys are some of the most educated fight fans out there. And I don't think you give enough people don't give enough love to those people, right? Because these people could actually be brought in to MMA camps to help them understand their opponents better. I think that's the future. I've heard it in the past that they've brought in like handicappers to help certain coaches or teams, but I think that should be something teams should be looking into. You know, like high level guys that know what they're doing and know what they see. It's good to get a third perspective. But anyways, go in the descriptions. If you do want to gamble, there are links in the app to help you, guide you to the proper places, the safe places, aka Cloud Bet. Small plug. But anyways, UFC Vegas, 50, why do I say 56? 78. 78. If you
Going
type in
backwards.
UFC Fight Night 78, I mean, you can't find this fight, right? You'll go back to the past, right? But if you type in UFC Vegas 78, you see Vicente Luque goes into this fight against RDA, a former champ. And I think a lot of people underestimated Luque because he's on a losing streak and he's been away for a long time. And all of these, uh, you know, articles coming out about his brain bleeding after the last fight against Jeff Neal and the time of recovery. And he even said it in the post fight that he was scared to get hit the first couple of rounds because of what he went through, and pretty much he almost had his career ended because of that. You know what I mean? And he's a guy that's known to be not not getting knocked out, right? He's a guy
right.
doing the knocking out to finishing people, right? And uh, and sometimes being tough is the worst poison for a fighter, right? Because you just take shot after shot after shot. But Luque shows you that you could come back from that, right? The human body heals itself. You just got to give it time. He comes in with a totally different style. It was kind of a totally different style, right? I don't know if it was a different style, but it was a different strategy, a different method to the madness. And he looked great. I thought he looked phenomenal. I thought he mixed in the wrestling. Nobody expected him to go in there and out wrestle RDA, right? I think RDA wasn't even expecting that. And you just see in the middle of the fight, Sicko, uh, I think it was Michael Chiesa. He called into like the UFC and told him that uh, RDA's corner took off his ankle wraps because Luque was using them to get the takedowns along the fence. You didn't see that? Did you catch that?
No, I didn't catch that at all. I wasn't watching with the commentary on, so I'm guilty of having it muted. But no, I didn't catch that. That's slick. I don't know if that's going to change all too much of the outcome, but hey, if you feel like it's giving somebody an extra grip, like for sure, why not?
Yeah, man. If you're gonna give them something to hold on to, you're gonna hold on to it to help yourself and implement the strategy that you have. Before we get to J Spec and his thoughts on the fight, let's get into some of these comments. We got some comments about Cub. We'll get into that fight next after this one, the main event. Let's see. Marcus is complaining about uh, the UFC Fight Pass. What the f is wrong with UFC Fight Pass? It claims to have the entire UFC library. It doesn't have shit. Really, I don't use UFC Fight Pass. What about you guys?
I do.
I
used
do.
to. I know some cards that they didn't have the rights to have on there, like the ABC cards. They might have changed that, but I remember Max and was it Cater? I believe it was Max and Cater that happened on ABC. And I remember like a while after I tried to watch it on Fight Pass, and I was like, it's not here. I couldn't find it. And then somebody told me like, oh, that's ABC. You have to go to ESPN Plus to watch that one on there. Like they have it backlogged, not on Fight Pass. So that could be what you're experiencing.
All right. What about you, J Spec? What are your experiences with Fight Pass?
Fight Pass overall is a great idea, just not well executed. There's some design flaws in their app. No disrespect. Their library is kind of hard to navigate when you're looking for certain stuff. And yeah, luckily we watch all the fights live as they're happening, so I don't really have too big of a need to go back and see recently. Like I know all their old school stuff is there, but are you talking about like recently past events? I don't watch those that much because I'm watching them live with you guys. So I don't know. Fight Pass, I give it, honestly, if I was to grade it, I give it a B-. Like I like it an idea, I like what it tries to do, but it doesn't always execute well. Anyways.
Well, Mustard, he's saying that he's emailed them 5 times and saw a bunch of bullshit. Well, yeah, if you look at a UFC website, that can just tell you like how much investment they want to put onto that side of things. You know what I mean? Because it's terrible, man. Most of the sports websites they're not very good, except for the AllStar. Go and download the AllStar app. In the descriptions, you can customize everything, every sport, not just the UFC. You can't watch fights on there, but you get everything else, all the news. Marcus, it says, oh, sick. I see, sicko. It's crazy. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So,
for anything recent, y'all, ESPN Plus. So ESPN Plus is going to have it day after. Fight Pass for pay-per-views, I believe it's a month after. For fight nights, I believe it's a week or 2 weeks after that it comes up on there. But ESPN Plus will have it the next day for fight nights. So and pay-per-views, but you would have to buy it still.
And Contender Series has that same lag you're talking about.
Yeah. So they have to I'm sure that's a working deal they have with ESPN Plus. Like ESPN Plus has to be able to have it on there on demand for a while before Fight Pass can have it on theirs, because then, why subscribe?
Well, I wish they would explain that to the customers, right? So the customers would know,
sure.
You know what I mean? A little snippet on the bottom of the screen or something, you know what I mean? Like to tell people if they're looking for something, it might be not available. UFC Fight Pass, man, they're not going to fix it. I'm going to tell you right now. The reason why is because they don't have to. If there was another streaming service that was offering the same thing that was better, then they would, it's competition, right? You need competition to grow. And there is no competition for those fights. That content, the availability of it, there's no competition. So, yeah, man, Marcus, you're gonna be confused, you're gonna be angry, and you're gonna be all kinds of emotional with that Fight Pass stuff. But yeah, man, we gotta move on. Fight Pass is Fight Pass, man. We could complain about it all day, every day, and get 50,000 emails. Nobody cares, right? Because they're just Yeah, it's false advertisement. When this
Unfortunately.
whole world is about false advertisement. Come on, you watch every commercial on TV, it's false advertising. You know what I mean? That's what it is.
I just got hit with that with the damn Papa John's, man. They had that
Yeah.
garlic stuffed crust pizza. And they hit me with the commercial like 6 times. Like the 5th
Yeah, and
time, I
then
didn't even care. But 6th time, I was
you
like,
probably just started your diet or something, right? Everybody when they
no.
start their diet, they
I
start
was like,
seeing those
that's
commercials.
good. And then I bought it. I fell into it. I bought it. It sucked. And I was just like, never again. I'm never falling
3
into
for
the
1,
trap.
3 for 1 deal this week.
Yeah.
You're like, I just started my diet. No, you didn't, because you're gonna go hit up that 3 for 1. You know you are. You little
With the soda.
gremlin. Anyways, yeah, let's get back into this main event. You know what I mean? A big fight for Luque. RDA, arguably a big fight for him as well, to show people that he's still a top level welterweight, right? Because he's been fighting at lightweight.
Yeah.
Man, Luque shut it down, man. Anything. He just shut it down. I thought he was winning all the rounds. You know what I mean? A couple of them are really, really close. I think a lot of people gave the third round to RDA. But I just think Luque, he just did a little bit more every round. And it was a pretty dominant performance. J-Spec, Luque, what's next for him, man? I think this 5-round fight really shook off all the cobwebs, and also his confidence too. After the last 2 losses, he rebuilt that through this fight, and he moved to Florida. He's full time at Kill Cliff. There's a lot of stuff going on with Luque, right? And he's still only 29. He's been around forever, and he's still only 29.
Really?
What's wrong with Luque?
Well, on that other side of it, there's that confidence, right? That reality. Like, you can talk about it, you can believe it, but at the end of the day, when you're talking about,
Are you about to put up a Michael Bisping ad right now? You can
no,
believe it.
no,
You achieve it.
the absolute opposite, actually. You can believe you're all good and stuff, but until Luque, that's serious shit. Your brain bleeding. That's not like. That's not. I don't know. I don't know how to measure medical diagnoses, but that's not nothing to play with, and could be very scary. Like you mentioned, as you're talking about your career being over, who you are as a person, your primary way of providing for your family, all that stuff. And like you said, he's only 29. I thought the brother was 30, but either way, still super young to be faced with that issue we all have to face as adults, is the eventual mortality of stuff. But not right now, not today, and hopefully not for a long time, because he looks healthy, looks good. He had to go in there and prove it without a doubt to himself. And there's no other way you can do it except go in there and fight a guy like RDA, a real dude. A real dude is going to try to fight you, try to beat you, try to meet you, whatever kind of craftiness, veteranship you got. He's got more of it. He's got more experience. He's got more life experience. He's older than you. So with all that being said, Luque, he's a fan favorite for a reason. People like him for a reason. And I think maybe this is not going to be one of those performances where people remember it. It might not go on people's highlight reel, but if you're a Vicente Luque fan, which I am, it goes onto your fandom highlight reel. This is the fight that, like you said, he got all that doubt and question marks out of his mind, and hopefully we get to see a bit better, sharper, more aggressive, even more fantastic version of him next time out. And that's all there is to it. On the other side, RDA, well, is it him, or did he just fight a fighter who's smart, gifted, and had a very smart game plan? Like you said, he didn't get into firefights. He wrestled how much ever he needed to. He struck when he needed to, just enough. Like, was RDA bad last night? No. Was he great last night? No. I don't really have much to say about him. I don't have too many negative points. I just think Luque kind of used his brain and used a really smart game plan out there and got the dub.
Definitely. Correction on Luque's age. He is 31 years old, basically in his prime, right?
Mm-hmm.
He had a prime performance, right? You don't have to get a finish to show that you are in your prime, to show that you're improving, you're elevating in your skill set. You could show it by strategy, implementing a game plan, and execution, right? And a lot of people, they look over those things because Everybody loves the highlights. Everybody loves the submissions, the chokes. They love the brawls. That's what they remember because it's easy to remember those things. Because you could be like, you don't have to remember the details. You just remember that. Oh, that fight was crazy. You know what I mean? That motherfucker went hard, right? Like that's all you can say to like
Right.
respond to certain like that fight was. But you don't remember that fight really. You just remember that it was crazy. It was hard. Like those dudes went, heavy on each other. But Dos Anjos. Let's look at this man. This man, 32 and 14. Well, 32 and 15 now. 38 years old. Sicko, is it age catching up to Dos Anjos? Is it the wear and tear? Is it like did he just have an off night? Did he just have a bad game plan? What do you think it is with
I,
Dos Anjos? Because
I
he just didn't look the same.
Man, I feel like the game plan was accurate. I feel like he was in there and what he was trying to achieve were the right things. And to be honest, going into this fight, I thought it would go exactly the way it did, but for Dos Anjos, I thought the fight's not going to be as explosive on the feet. I don't think RDA still has that same explosion. He looks a little bit slower. I mean, obviously at 38 years old, you're going to be Father Time's going to catch you. It catches all of us. And that's what it looks like for me is that RDA has plateaued. I don't know if I'm ready to say that he's starting to decline. Definitely not at a rapid rate. He didn't look terrible in there. Rob said it earlier. Did he look terrible? No. But yeah, I just feel like at this age, what you see from him is what you're going to get. And the thing that surprised me was those takedowns that you pull up right now, the control time and the takedowns in RDA. It says 2 for 7. It was 0 for 7. The 2 takedowns that he got were, I mean, very little. One of them, there was some control time when they reversed it and stuff. But one of the takedowns he did complete, Luque was right back up to his feet immediately. So that was the most impressive thing for Luque. I don't think RDA did anything particularly wrong. I don't think his game plan was bad. I just don't think he still has that explosion. He doesn't have the power to go out there and really put somebody out right now, especially at that division. So for me, when I look at Dos Anjos, I think that's where he's at, and that's where he's going to be at for how long? A year, maybe 2 years, and we're going to see a heavy drop off. I'm not saying that he's hit that big decline in his career yet, but it's coming. He's definitely hit the plateau, though. He's not going to get any better.
There you go. RDA, man. We'll see. I think we have to wait until his next fight at welterweight because he needs to stop jumping back and forth, man. That's not helping him any.
Thank you.
Stay at welterweight. You're 38 years old. Cut less weight. You know what I mean? And he looked the same. He looked phenomenal, right? It's just
fine,
the
yeah.
execution. Yeah. So RDA, we have to see, what he can do. I think you give him to be honest with you, I think you give him another top 15 fighter. I say you put RDA against Michael Chiesa. Yeah, have they fought already?
Yes. No, I'm thinking about Luque.
Oh, they have. He
They
beat
did too?
RDA
Okay.
by decision.
2020.
Wow.
Just don't even remember
That's
that
surprising. That's surprising. This thing is, we don't remember that fight, right? So RDA's got to fight one of these newer guys. I think RDA against Jack Della. I think a top, like one of these like top 10, 11 through, because he beat Neil Magny. He hasn't fought Kevin Holland, but I don't think you want to put Kevin Holland against RDA. I don't know.
fight.
But
It's
maybe
not a
you
good
do.
matchup for RDA.
Maybe you do. You know what I mean? Right now, do you build Kevin Holland or do you give RDA a chance to get back into the top 15?
I mean, we know that answer from the
You
UFC.
build Kevin Holland, right?
Yeah,
Like
100%.
UFC loves Kevin Holland, right? So I think you're gonna put Kevin Holland
Yeah.
probably against like a RDA, right? And a former champ. That's what you want. I think it could be a main event, another 5-rounder, name value, RDA. Kevin Holland, he's the new star. He's the newer kid on the block, right? And looks like he's establishing himself in the welterweight division with the way he performed in his last fight. Looks like he's much more focused on like going after a certain thing. Like maybe he has a dream now. Maybe he has a goals now in fighting. I don't know because it seems like he's always 1 foot out the door. But I think RDA versus Kevin Holland would be a great fight, and it would be great for Kevin Holland, a good name. Vicente Luque, of course, you want him to fight ahead of him because he's won against a guy that has lost, who's ahead of him. I think Sean Brady would be a great fight. Or have they fought already? Luque. Nope,
Sean
he
Brady,
hasn't
no.
fought Sean Brady. I think him versus Sean Brady is a good fight, and I think that it should be a 3-rounder. I don't think you should put them in a 5-rounder. Um, I think a 3-rounder on a pay-per-view. You
For
open
sure.
that pay-per-view with Sean Brady and Vicente Luque
For sure.
would be a great fight. And Sean Brady's healing from an injury. Vicente just lost. They could book this, you know, early. If they're in a hurry, December. But if they're not, they could book it like January, February of early next year. A big welterweight fight. Vicente needs another win over a solid top 15 fighter. RDA
Yeah.
wasn't even ranked at welterweight, right? He was a ranked lightweight. So
Mhm.
it doesn't really tell us too much in the scheme of the title picture for Vicente Luque, but his next fight should be something that elevates him, right? And Sean Brady would be a great fight. Uh, yeah, and he's fought like a lot of the other guys
Yeah.
in the top 10.
Jeff
So we'll
Neal,
see.
Wonder Boy.
Yeah, what do you guys think? What do you guys think about Vicente Luque? Who should he fight?
I don't know, but I just think this fight, even though it wasn't consequential to this weight class's title picture, I do think it was very beneficial for Luque, like for the reasons we already mentioned. Plus, a slump buster. Like we all need them. They're important. Just get out of the streak of negativity of a skid, if you will. So, yeah, even though it wasn't for the rankings, but definitely important for Luque. And I agree with you. Obviously, he's got to fight uphill, but he's like you said, you kind of point out. There's unfortunately a lot of the guys in front of him. He's already fought a little bit. So do you run? Do you run the risk of rematches there? I wouldn't.
Yeah, you want to kind of sway away from rematches, right? Unless
Yeah,
it's really necessary.
that's the unfortunate part is when you look at that 1 through 10, those are all rematches for him unless
Unless
and
he
then
fights
Gilbert, he's
Gilbert
not gonna,
or Shavkat.
I don't know if if they would fight each other,
No,
right?
they wouldn't fight each other. Yeah.
So yeah, outside of Sean Brady, it's a rematch. One thing I will say is Neil Magny is the one who got booked with Ian Gary, correct?
Yes.
He's the replacement fighter. So if Ian Gary wins that fight against Magny, I can see a situation where he leapfrogs over Luque, and that could be a potential next fight. Is Luque against Gary?
Yeah. Well, if you look at the way that the UFC perceives Luque and perceives Gary, of course they're going to give Gary the more opportunities. Let's just be real
Mhm.
about it, right? It baffles me, to be honest with you, that Luque and his fighting style and just his fighting style, right? The way he fights and the highlight reels that he has, he's not more of a popular fighter. It baffles me, right? I know he doesn't talk crazy, but some certain fighters they go in there and fight like Luque and they're just more popular than him, even though they don't talk trash. And Luque, I don't think I've ever heard him talk trash about anybody at all. Like
Not
he's
that I can
very
remember.
respectful, right?
It's super cool.
Yeah, super nice. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean,
Like
unfortunately for him, every time he's had that opportunity to take the next really big step, he's fallen short. Whether
yeah,
it was Jeff
true.
Neal, Wonder Boy, Bilal Muhammad, like all of those fights, he's right there. I think where he's placed is kind of what he is right now. I mean, we're talking about the rematches. All the guys above him would be rematches on fights that he's lost. And then there's guys below him that we're sitting here going, "Ooh, that'd be a really bad matchup. I don't think he could win those." So that's where do you go with somebody like that?
It's confusing, man. But I think Luque he's on his second tear now. He went through his first tear, lost, one more than he lost, but then he needed that reset. During his prime, he's 31 years old. I think he's gonna have a better approach, and we'll see a different Luque. We might not see as violent, right? You might see a more calculated version of Luque. But if the finishes come, they're gonna come. He's gonna chase after them. But yeah, good, good, good matchups in the future for Luque. RDA, he might just turn into a gatekeeper for that welterweight division. And how long will that last? Because to be honest with you, if pay per view, if PFL is offering $1 million to fight what 4 times in 1 year in that
Mm-hmm.
short period,
Yeah.
RDA might be interested in doing that. Who knows, right? RDA still loves fighting. He still wants to compete. And if there's $1 million pot at the end of the rainbow. I don't see why other promotions are not. I was just talking to a UFC former UFC champion about that, about like, you know, the fighter pay and like promotions offering like $1 million, you know, if
And
you win tournaments in short period of time. And it's just like, it's a, you know, they were saying like this is a good thing for like fighter pay and free agency and all that stuff, but
Yeah.
we still have to see, you know, we still have to go a few years to see if that's going to be advantageous to the fighters, because it might end up being not advantageous to the fighters if we see promotions, if we see a promotion merge,
Yeah.
right? And then the competition is smaller now, right? Because you merged, right? You became one, two became
Mhm.
one, right? So we'll have to see in the future. But anyways, if everybody's wondering that's watching right now, what is that thing on the screen? It is the AllStar app. This is what the AllStar app looks like, and you could go to every event. Look at the top. I'm scrolling across. Look at all the events right there. You just push them. Aspinall, Tibera, boom, all the fights. You know, all the fights. So let's say this weekend, last weekend, Luque Dos Anjos, you push Swanson versus Hakeem on the top. You get your betting info. You get Swanson's record, and then just everything's there. Dawodu, same thing. Finishing rate, record, age, reach, height, country, all that stuff is sitting there. So let's go to this fight.
not
Cub
only
Swanson.
not only
Okay.
that, not only that, don't cut yourself short, John. Not only do you get all that cool stuff, but John's doing these killer interviews with all these fighters leading up on their fight week. You're finding out stuff about them on the spot. Those interviews are in this app too, so don't sleep on that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I think you could find them on the app. Where is that? If you go
Yeah, when you're
back,
in the fight picks area, usually yours is the pre-fight. It'll
yeah.
say
So
it,
like
but
if you
now it's
go over
post-fight.
here, actually, if you go here and you scroll down, there's videos that pop up. It depends on like what sport. But if you go down here to picks, you go to picks. Here are all the recent events, and then you can make your picks up here for next week's show. Last
Yeah.
week's show is right here. I went. Let me see what I did on my picks. I picked RDA, so I got Swanson. Doc is lost. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4 picks wrong. But
Pretty good.
anyways,
Not bad at
it's
all.
all good. I ain't tripping about that. Let's go to the UFC. Boom, UFC. Last week's event. Cub Swanson versus Cub Swanson. After he wins, he says, "I don't know if I won that." Sicko, would you admit that?
I don't know if yeah, at his age, man, you know what I mean? Be honest. I love the honesty from Cub. He always keeps it a buck, man. He's always real. And I completely agree with him. I did not think he won that fight either. I mean, it was close. People love to use the word robbery. I know I'm not gonna use that word, but I did favor Dawodu. Take that for what you want. I thought he won the fight.
Well, when you look at the statistics, J-Spec, Dawodu,
Mm.
significant strikes. I know significant strikes doesn't really mean shit, but we're going to look at it anyways because it's there for us to
Yes.
marvel at, right? This computation of strikes, and somehow they know they're significant. Dawodu, 87 landed significant strikes over 66 by Cub Swanson. Head strikes even, not 49 to 49. I'm sure that you could accurately computate that one, right? Like if a strike landed the head, the impact of it is TBA. But
Right.
Yeah.
but landing it, yes, you could tell. Leg strikes, Dawodu 22-6. Control time he had over him, and Swanson had one takedown, I believe, at the end of the first or second round. He kind of like tried to win the round with the takedown, and it was
Yeah.
slick. You know what I mean? And you know what? I did a live radio show during yesterday's UFC, and they were asking me about Luque, RDA, Swanson, and Dawodu, and Dawkins Roundtree, and he's like, "Yo, any bets you're gonna throw down? Like any advice you could give somebody about the fights?" And I told him, "Bet on Cub Swanson." I told him bet on Cub Swanson. Cub Swanson's going to go in there, and he's going to do what he needs to do to win his fight. And we might see some vintage Cub Swanson. You know what I mean? And we did see some vintage, but clearly
Glimpses.
Dawodu is a better fighter. He's the younger fighter. You know what I mean? And just when he landed, it seemed like he landed with more impact, and he landed much more if you look at the statistics. But the judges saw it for Swanson. But my advice was right. It just the judges were wrong. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, but if he did take my advice, then you won some money, right? Swanson was the underdog by
Yeah, he was
plus
pretty.
265. You threw down $1,000. That's a good little come up, right? So J Spec Swanson, do we put him against these types of level fighters still, or could we just give him? Because if you give him prospects, man, he's gonna run into a prospect that's just gonna be a monster, right? Like that's eventually gonna happen.
I mean, the reality is there's two choices really. You can put him on the fight veterans exclusive, like you guys fighting for the retirement sakes, go on that kind of tour, if you will, or you got to pick a level and be a gatekeeper. And I mean, yes, eventually, John, you're right. It is a little bit like playing Russian roulette in a regards that eventually the prospect, the young lion, one of them will get through you if that's the role you're going to play. That's going to happen. But depends on what level you pick. And if you're really smart about it and you're honest about it, and Cub's pretty honest about it, he didn't even think he won that own fight. So if he's that kind of honest and he can be like Jim Miller honest and fight where you are in this year 2023, not the Cub Swanson we all love and we know you're a badass, if you're fighting at that level appropriately, he can be winning a good number of matches awesomely. Maybe this wasn't an awesome one, but he could be like Jim Miller, and nobody's quite like Jim Miller, but in that regard where you are at the proper level of competition, a veteran, nothing to prove left, but you still want to fight and you still want to entertain. Fuck yeah. Like put Cub Swanson at that level, and I will gladly watch Cub Swanson for as long as he wants to fight. I think the guy's awesome. And like you, John, I picked Cub, maybe for fandom reasons. Maybe he didn't deserve the decision, but I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. Because here's the thing. Here's my criticism on Hakeem is you're right. He's younger. He's faster. He's supposed to be all this stuff. But you know what he lacked? The thing that Cub Swanson never lacks is aggression and showing that you want to fight. Hakeem was just in there moving backwards most of the time. And if you want to look, fighters, young fighters, old fighters, doesn't matter. Look how many times fighters get screwed being technical, moving backwards a lot, not being the first one out the gate. It happens all the time. And whether you want to call it robbery or knowing the audience, in this case, these judges, Hakeem did the type of thing that gets this type of result. And there we are. That's my 2 cents on this fight.
Yeah, another thing that I looked at was Dawodu's past performances, right? In his last couple of fights, especially in his last 2 out of 3, he's lost them, right? Those fights by decision. And I think the reason why he lost those fights was because of what J-Spec said, that he's kind of like, he doesn't show urgency. And when he does have his opponents hurt, he doesn't really go after it as hard. And I feel like in the judge's eyes, that scores a lot, right? Even if the dude is not hurt, but if you hit him clean one time and you felt like it landed very clean, you have to go after the guy just to show the judges like, yo, this dude was hurt. Like that could sway a judge's mind, right? That could be that one point, that one highlight of that round where the judges remember and be like, yo, Hakeem won that fight, that round, right? But Hakeem didn't do that. And he didn't do that in his last couple of fights. And that's why I picked Cub Swanson, because Cub Swanson does have that showmanship. And, people forget, like, Cub Swanson is the first dude to come out with his hands down. It's like him and Eddie Weiland. Like him and both those guys fight with his hands down. We talk about Alex Pereira, but man, Cub Swanson and Eddie Weiland, those are the original guys, right? Back in the WC days where they come in with his hands. It's wild to me. Bobby Green, that's the same style, right? Where they go in and it's just, I respect those guys so much, and to be lasting that long at the highest level, yes, it go like we have to kind of just be like, in awe because what are the first things we're taught when we go and it's not even like you go to a boxing gym or anything like this.
It's your pops,
You just
your
go.
uncle.
Yeah,
It's the
your
first thing
uncle's
it's
like,
out.
get
You
your
get your
hands
hands
up.
up.
And he
First
slaps you in
thing.
the back of the head. You're like, oh, you missed out. Get your hands up, right? Like, they don't have that. Sicko, it's like, what do we do with Cub Swanson now? You know what I mean? If he keeps winning.
Unfortunately for Cub, I don't see him leaving on top. I feel like he's going to push it as far as he can possibly push it. My biggest fear for him is he kind of goes out very similarly to some of the vets that we've seen that, we're like, God, please don't let him go out nasty. The Frankie Edgars, these guys where you're just like, God, I don't want to keep seeing them get knocked out like that. Not to say that he's been getting knocked out. A couple finishes, obviously the Jonathan Martinez one was not great. But his age, I just don't see him walking away. I don't see him walking away anytime soon. I thought maybe after this win, he'd be like, okay, let me think about it. And there was no hesitation. He looked like he was, ecstatic. Obviously, he didn't know if he won the fight, and that doesn't look like it's going to persuade him to maybe call it quits. I think he's going to continue to fight for as long as he can. And I think eventually you're just going to see another one of those guys, a guy similar to Martinez or similar to Giga, where he runs into a prospect that we're like, oh, man, this might be tough for him, and he might get put out one or two more times before he does call it a career. I just think Cub is one of those guys where, man, we're gonna end up criticizing him for the thing we love about him, which is being a true warrior. And that's the way it goes. And, just appreciate him for it. You're going to see him get put away. You're going to see him get hurt again because he's going to walk into the fire. That's who he is. And that's why we love him. So let's cheer for him and let's hope that doesn't happen. But like I said, he's going to, if you put him against these guys that he's capable of beating, his natural state, his natural thing is let me move up. Let me go for it again. Because he's just that type of person.
For sure. And yeah, man. Before we move on to the next fight, Roundtree versus Dawkins, we'll get to some of these comments. Marcus Mustard saying Hakeem was tagging Cub, like Cub said. Yeah, he was getting tagged up, right? He was the one who was bleeding first.
Sure was.
Marcus also says, but body language and everything, I don't know, showmanship, veteran lean, but Hakeem was tagging him. You're right. We just talked about that. Showmanship, man, it helps, man. These judges, they're not perfect.
Body language.
Brianna Frost, shout out to Brianna Frost.
What's up, Bri?
A regular on the what was it, the spaces, the live spaces. Go check those out every weekend during the fights. If the fights are on, go on Twitter, look for the spaces. They're on there, chatting and having a good old time with J Spec and Sicko. Let's move on. Let's go to the light heavyweight fight between Khalil Roundtree and Chris Dawkins. Interesting story over the week I heard about Khalil Roundtree, right? Is that Khalil Roundtree, like if you look at his record, okay, so his record, he's 11-5, 12-5 now. But he said, I heard that when he went on that, like these back-to-back losses right here, this is when he went vegan. This is a story I've heard, that he went vegan for a while, and it was just that aggression wasn't there, that killer instinct wasn't there, that power wasn't there like it was.
Power, man, power. It's real. It's real.
It's real. You need that meat, right? You need that meat, right? You need that protein.
Pause.
I have so many vegan jokes I want to say right now. But.
Right? So like, and even Sean O'Malley, he came out. He said he went vegan for a while, and he said it wasn't the same, right? And I'm glad he switched up. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being a vegan or being a vegetarian. I think it's great. It shows you have discipline to not eat all the other stuff that's out there, especially processed foods, which are delicious and phenomenal. And I promote it if you want to be dead at age 50. But Khalil Roundtree, man, he has turned it around, after those back-to-back losses to Kutalaba, and especially that fight, that loss to Pragneo, right? Like, that was just like, how did he lose to Pragneo, right? Yeah. People were probably shocked. But he did lose to Pragneo. But since then, KO, Bukakis, that knee stomp, Then he KO'd Robertson. Then he got the somewhat controversial decision against Jacoby, and Jacoby's a top 15 fighter. And then now he just knocked out Chris Daukaus, who was a ranked heavyweight. And I thought Daukaus looked decent in the fight. He moved around well. But Roundtree, man, once you show a hint of any weakness, he's going to go in there and pounce, dude. And the dude, technically, he's become a phenomenal striker, right? He was clearly ready for whatever Daukaus had for him, right? Because you could kind of see, like, he was spamming the right hook, the counter right hook, right? He was just throwing that, and then I think he was baiting him with that, and then he threw the left straight down the middle, and that's the one that dropped him, right? And yeah, man, Roundtree has that like game-altering power at light heavyweight, and he showed it against Daukaus, man. Daukaus, he looked all right, to be honest with you. J-Spec, what'd you think?
Chris Daukaus looked like Chris Daukaus, just more in shape. And I say this with all the respect in the world. I think he's a good fighter, just not great. And I think Khalil has greatness inside of him. It's just whether he's going to fully reach the high water mark I set for him in my mind. I think there's going to be good things from Chris in the future. Physically, he looked great. Like, I actually applaud him for the discipline it takes to trim down from, remember, I mean, come on. We all remember what he looked like when he first came into the UFC. Like, he literally looked like a cop dragged out of a cop car, like fluffy as shit. Like, so where he's at now, premier athletic weight class for him. Good for him. I hope good stuff in the future, but man, it's tough when you're going against light heavyweights nowadays. They're all murderous. Like, honestly, like, people kind of dog the light heavyweight division for some reason because there's not since John left. But the reality is, like, every single one of these guys in the division are huge and powerful. And Khalil is now, like, if you will, let's say he's in a new version of himself ever since, he corrected some things that wasn't working for him. And he's on a hot streak. And maybe, and I'll dare to say this, maybe the Khalil Roundtree looked down on that record previously. Maybe confidence was one of the things he didn't quite have in there yet. I'm just guessing. But if that is the case, problem solved. Because like that streak that I just mentioned that he's on, he's winning in various ways. Like, he's a man in his time right now. Khalil Rountree's a dangerous opponent, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the near future, very near future, we hear Khalil Roundtree or somewhere near him saying that he's having a hard time finding fights. And that's my thoughts.
Yeah. Khalil Roundtree, 33 years old, clearly doing the best he's ever done throughout his career, and I feel like him only having 16 fights. And a lot of those fights being in the UFC, it helps him, right? Being that age and entering his prime, and the matchups that are in his future is going to be phenomenal. So, Khalil Roundtree, keep doing what you're doing. Eat that meat. You know how it is, sicko. Or do you know how it is?
I don't know what you talk. I'm a vegan too.
Texas barbecue boy.
I'm a vegan too, man. I'm vegan. I'm telling you.
That when you put it that way, I'm a vegan, bro. Yeah, no, it's real though. People, it's real. I mean, what have we always said about the Diaz brothers, right? Gas tank for days, but man, it's no volume. Power. They got no power, nothing. Sean O'Malley said it. You referenced him earlier. He's leading up to his Contender Series fight. He's like, I had a bright idea to go vegan, and it was terrible. It was a horrible decision, and I'm glad I'm not vegan anymore. And maybe that's something that he had to learn the hard way, but God, I love watching Roundtree fight. Like, he's one of my favorite fighters to watch because very opposite of what we just criticized Hakeem Dawodu for, right? He can tag people. He has them hurt, and he's just too cautious. He doesn't go for it, or at least he doesn't get aggressive when it's time to. When Roundtree has you hurt, it's not just that he comes at you. He is almost evil, like borderline vicious when he has you hurt. He looks for certain strikes, whether it's the knee stomp. We remember the soccer kick to Buddy's ribs while he was on the floor.
Yep.
Like the last couple follow-up shots that he threw at Dawkins were, I mean, there was really bad intent on those. And that's why we love him. We love that ferociousness of Khalil Roundtree. So every time he's in there, whether he wins or he loses, I know he's going to bring violence into that cage. And he's a fan favorite for sure, for good reasons. And for Dawkins, listen, if somebody were to come up and ask me if somebody had never seen the UFC, they've never seen Dawkins, and they go, oh, what's your opinion on him? My answer would be, he's fine. He's fine. It is what it is. But you got somebody who's okay, he's fine, and you put him against an absolute savage, a guy who is a killer like Roundtree. Me personally, this is exactly how I thought this fight would go. But, unfortunately, I haven't, and I don't think I ever will pick Dawkins in a fight. That's just to keep it a buck.
Dawkins, he started off red hot, right? Heavyweight division, knocked off Parker Porter, Nascimento, Olenek, and then Shamil, all KOs, and then he hit the biggest of the big heavyweights, right? And you can't blame him, right? He's going punch for punch with Derek Lewis, Curtis Blades, Rosenstrike, two of those guys. All of them, they're heavyweights. They have serious power, but two of them were, you got a brawler in Lewis who just throws hammers, and you've seen what he can do with that for everybody. And then Blades, who has the takedown threat, but he also, if he lands, he's going to knock you out. And Rosenstrike, just a kickboxer, phenomenal striking. And then he just lost the Roundtree, right? That's 4 in a row. To be honest with you, I think he's gonna be he's gonna fight at light heavyweight again. I think he's the same age as Roundtree, right? So like you can't just say one thing for one guy and another for another guy. I think Dawkins, this is his first fight. Maybe if he didn't face off against a power puncher, we would have saw a different version of him. Matchups mean everything in this sport. But I think Dawkins, he'll get one more fight. I like Dawkins a lot. Dawkins is like one of the nicest dudes you ever meet, like real, like down to earth type of person. But when you separate that away from the fighting, they're gonna give him a guy that he could beat up at light heavyweight. They should, because they've been just giving him killer after killer after killer after killer, and he's hit a slump. So we'll see what happens with Roundtree, though. Man, he's got some interesting stuff coming up, right? You got Roundtree sitting at number 13 on the rankings. I say, if you want to kill somebody, you put him against Dominic Reyes in his next fight.
This man evil, bro.
Dominic Reyes is a nice dude. Why are we going to do that?
But I'm saying, the thing is, like, do we put Reyes versus Dawkins? But does Dawkins deserve another ranked fighter? Like, would that be a good fight to make? That's the question, right? Because Dawkins, maybe he's in the good graces of the UFC because he's taken certain fights. Because you remember he talked about it. He talked about like, hey, I was going to move down to light heavyweight after the Derek Lewis fight, but they just kept on offering me heavyweight fights, right? Big fights too, like highly ranked guys. And he just had to take it. Now, he's in a different position, right? Now he's just going to take what he can get. I think that they should put Dawkins against Reyes. I think that's the fight that they should make. It's still a good name. For Roundtree, man, I want to see him fight Alex Pereira with that style, dude. That's what I want to see. I know Alex Pereira is way up here at number 3, and Dawkins might have, or Roundtree might have to win a couple fights to reach that level. But man, we've seen crazier things in the UFC. I say you put Roundtree versus Blachowicz. That's the next fight to make.
Why not?
Why not, right? Why not push Roundtree? He wants a main event fight. Blachowicz is a former champ coming off, what is it? How many losses is he coming off of? Coming off 1 loss and a draw against Ankalaev, right? So he's 1, 2, and 1 in his last 4 fights. Yeah, let's see what Dawkins can do. Throw him in the pit against Jan Blachowicz. What do you think, J-Spec? Is that a good matchup, or am I acting crazy?
No. I'm for it. If we're in the position of being pro Khalil Roundtree, I guess would be the hat I'm putting on because I like the dude. Yeah. Well, I mean, fuck the rankings. I'll just say it. Like they screw us over on the rankings all the time, and then they get to mismatch the rankings all the time. So if you're in the top 15, that just means you're world class, and that means everybody's game on that roster, is my opinion. And why not? Like Blachowicz, in my opinion, no disrespect, I think he's been getting a little too many like, hey, come on, get the title back. Like I feel like they've been really trying to get him to get the title back, and it's just not working out for whatever reasons. The men opposite of him being those reasons. So with that being said, yeah, why not? Like he's Hyon, let's be honest, I feel like there's a similar structure to Peter Yan and Sugar Sean, right? Like Piotr was kind of hovering and just having like that kind of staleness and draws and losses, things not going his way, and then a person way down the ranking in Sugar Sean goes and beats him. This same type of story could play out right here. So I like your suggestion, John. Why not? Fuck it. Let's go. Roundtree. Let's shoot him straight up to the top. Let's get him in there. Why not?
Sicko, let's say we can't get Hyon. Then who do we get?
Oof. Johnny Walker would be a rematch. If I'm not mistaken, he lost to Johnny Walker before.
Mm-hmm.
Man, there's a lot of good fights around that area. It's just how slow do you want to cook him up? He's not getting any younger, and there's a lot of winnable fights for him, especially when I'm looking at 5 through 10 there. I think when it comes up, and like I said, with this guy's style, who knows? Who knows who's going to put who out? It's tough to imagine him just going to decisions constantly. So you could throw him in there with anyone. I mean, if there's a fight opening up, Ryan Span's there. I don't know how far along you want to jump him.
I think
Rakic
Span's
is
fighting
there.
Smith. I believe so. Span's fighting somebody.
Is Rakic booked?
Rakic is. We don't know the stats of Rakic. He's been injured for 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that's been plaguing that whole division, right? Yuri was out. They had to shuffle things around. Jamal Hill's out now. Shuffle some more things around.
Rakic was in title talks.
Yeah, exactly.
Before he disappeared, right? So we don't know about Rakic, but yeah, they need to put Roundtree against the veterans that have been sitting around the top 10 for a little bit too long. Yeah. Anthony Smith, Ozdemir, Rakic. I think Rakic is a little bit different from those guys. I think Rakic is kind of still up on, rising up. Rakic, Blachowicz, Krylov is still around winning fights, right? Johnny Walker seemed like he hit his second gear in the division, doing really, really well. I don't think you want to put him against Johnny Walker because they can meet later on, right? As they rise up together. I think the veterans, you need to put him against a veteran. And I think that's what they're going to do next. I think they're going to put him against a veteran. He wants a 5-round fight as well. Do you think that's a good idea, Sicko, to go into 5-round fight when you're not known to fight for 5 rounds? You're really known to smash people early on.
I don't think it matters for him, bro. I don't see him going past 3.
It's more pay, right?
Yeah, it's just more pay. I don't see him going into a fight going, okay, this is 5 rounds. Let me really, really pace myself and be patient and sit back and take a round or 2 off. Like he's a killer, man. If he smells blood, he's going after it.
There you go. A couple comments from the listeners. Marcus talking about Khalil, the real deal. Roundtree, yeah, he's got a million names. Roundtree is something else, just a beast. Roundtree said he wants a 5 rounds main event next time. Yes.
Yep.
Mark M says Roundtree versus Hyon is the fight. Reyes Dawkins is legit, shouldn't be ranked. It says also I'd love to see belt past the coral belt. Oh, he's talking about the league. Yeah, we'll keep the league. What does he say? He says he joined the league. My picks up to this point aren't saved. Wouldn't they be updated? Yes, they would be updated. Maybe a glitch.
Yeah, go into settings and report it in the feedback area, buddy.
Yes, go into the settings, report it. Easiest way to get it done. Okay, so the next 2 fights on the main card, the next 3 fights on the main card, we had Polyana Viana lose by submission in the second round to Lucindo. Yeah, Tafon Chukwi lose to AJ Dobson by decision. And then Josh Frem won by decision against Jamie Pickett. The Tafon Dobson fight and Frem Pickett fight, 2 fights that most people wouldn't write home from prison about, right? Just
Very
wasn't the best
specific.
fight. Yeah. And then Polyana Viana, everybody loves her. Why would
wonder
you
why.
not if you are a heterosexual male? But
That's one way to put it.
but Lucindo is the better fighter, and I think a lot of people were hyped up because of what Polyana did in her last couple of fights. And some people are going hard on Polyana Viana, talking about, she's Paige Van Zandt. She's the Brazilian Paige Van Zandt. She's just fighting to grow her other business ventures.
Yep.
And true or not, you know what I mean? She's still fighting in the UFC, and she's still taking fights. And she finished fights, man. Like on the ground, on the feet. She's a pretty decent fighter. I don't understand why there's so much hate on Paulina Viana, but Lucindo, she has a brighter future. Let's just put it like that, right? But I think like not too much to say about these fights. You guys got anything to say about like these other fights on the main card? Because I think a lot of people want to talk about the prelims.
Not the main card, but if we are switching on to the prelims, definitely got to take a moment to celebrate. Me and Sickle are celebrating. I know many others Marcus McGee fans are celebrating. Yeah, Marcus, you're the maniac, dude. Like so it's good to see him go out there and do exactly what he told us he was gonna do, and go out there and seek the finish and got it. So happy for him on that one.
To rain on your parade though. I'm gonna rain on your parade a little bit. And I know Marcus McGee is a monster. I've known him for a couple of years now and seen what he can do on the regional scene. And he's doing really well in the UFC. But I'm just giving you reasons why this win, you can't stack it up to his debut win. Let's just say
Of course.
Let's just compare it, right? Number one, JP Bays, he's basically a flyweight, right? That doesn't want to cut down to 125, and maybe he's doing it wrong, you know what I mean? And I think he's had some tough cuts, right? And he says he could take a shot better at 135, but it seems like he can't because he just gets dropped in every fight, right? Like he's been knocked out in his last 3 out of 4 fights, and now he's on a 4-fight losing streak, and I'm concerned, right, about that. Like he just gets hit, and he just drops, dude, like with these guys. And I know he's facing off against some killers, but man, JP Buys, man, matchmaking wise, they just haven't done a proper solid right in the UFC. And it'd be hard for them to like keep him around when he's on a 4-fight losing streak, right? And he was injured ahead of this fight, I believe. He had suffered some injury. He had some surgery.
He was off for a little while.
Yeah, he was off for a long time. But McGee, let's praise him, man. 7-1, looking like a complete maniac. Look at him.
That's what he is.
He's a monster, right? 33 years old. Now he's sitting at, 3-4 wins in a row. The only loss he has is to Nascimento. But look at this. All knockouts. Knockouts, man. Mm-hmm. I'll let you talk, Sicko. Like, you guys know McGee. Like,
put the pause on you, man. He said it going into this fight. He said, this guy's not going to be able to stand with me. He fancies himself a legit striker. And especially at those weight classes, man, that's a hell of a team out there with him, Suge, Kyler, Matrix. They got Mario Bautista out there. Like, they all spar together. They all train together. So they're seeing, you talk about strikers. Like, that room right there are some of the elite strikers in those divisions. So the fact that they're seeing from each other, if you notice when this fight started, Marcus's eyes, man, he saw everything. The low kicks, even just the leg kicks from Buys were coming up whiffing. I mean, he saw everything that Buys was throwing his way, and he's fast. He's explosive. You can see the athleticism, that quick twitch that he has. I'm just happy for him, man. At his age, someone that got into it a little bit late, was on the regional scene, was on the amateur scene for a good while, and he was waiting for his time. He was on a podcast with Tim Welch leading up to his first fight in the UFC, talking about maybe going on the Contender Series, and there was rumblings, and he was waiting for the call, and that's what it was looking like. And they were saying, a year from now we'll be in the UFC. All of a sudden, he gets the call, short notice fight. We see it time and time again, and unfortunately, You know, the trend has been not good for those guys that come in super short notice and, hey, this is going to be your entry to the UFC. You're going to be a big underdog. It usually doesn't go well, but there's something about Marcus, man, where he comes out, starches him in the first, then has his second fight where he's a massive favorite. And listen, I'm not going to take anything away from Marcus in this fight. Just because they threw him the alley-oop, he still had to finish it. And boy, did he. He windmill jammed it. You know, yes, Baez is not great. Yes, he's on a losing streak. Yes, he's a bit chinny. But Marcus's performance, nonetheless, was spectacular. And obviously, I'm biased. But I'm very happy, man. I reached out to him, and yeah, I'm glad he got that bonus as well. That's awesome.
Hell yeah.
Who got the bonuses? Do you guys remember?
I just know he did. I didn't check the rest.
I don't have the list in front of me. But on that note of short notice fights, if we're gonna criticize and be fair on all fronts, that needs to be mentioned that JP did take this fight on short notice. Maybe not the best choice for your career and your record, but we've heard from many fighters that taking short notice fights is the best way to curry favor, the quickest way to curry favor with the UFC. Keep yourself employed. So sometimes a man's got to do what a man's got to do. And yeah, all was around. The other fight I wanted to highlight from the prelims, just because it was a train wreck, was Juliana Miller versus Luana Santos. Juliana Miller doing her Chase Hooper impressions out there. Not good. Just not good. It's not good to see, I don't think, in my opinion.
Dude, she's like Chase Hooper blended with the Diaz brother.
Y'all killing me, man. Y'all killing me.
Isn't she like?
I mean, bro, I'm supposed to ride for her. She's a 10th Planet girl. All
that's
her
what I'm saying.
are my homies. Like, you know, I'm not supposed to rag on her here, but God, it looked bad. It looked bad in her last fight, and it might have looked even worse in this fight, man. Like, not even. I was hoping for a little bit of improvement. I saw even worse from her in this fight. Like, she just has to go back to the lab, man. She has to really, really start focusing on striking, especially from a defensive aspect. Her footwork is terrible. She's squared up. She throws strikes with her elbows flared out. Her head is always on the center line. Like, it's just, it's 101 what not to do in terms of striking. And if you're not going to be an incredible wrestler, you know, her jiu-jitsu skills are there. She is good on the ground. But if you don't have that wrestling pedigree to get it there, you're going to have to strike. And it's just, she's just not good in that category, unfortunately.
Yeah, her record is not very good, man. She's only 27. It's just very surprising that they put her on that show with just it's not like she has this like background in like high level kickboxing or Muay Thai or wrestling or jiu-jitsu. You know, I guess jiu-jitsu is her thing, but it's not like she was one of the known like.
No, she wasn't out here winning ADCCs and stuff. No,
exactly, right. So, and I know she has a personality, and you can listen to her talk, and she's like kind of reminds me of like a West Coast version of J-Lo, right? Like, it's like the girl around the way, right? Like, you talk to her, it's like a girl that you could talk to, and she's like cool, and she trains, and she's a professional fighter. But man, she just looks uncomfortable in there. Just it doesn't looks like she still has the jitters, and it's continuing, right? Because she's fought on the Ultimate Fighter multiple times, and then she won the finale, and but her first two fights, it's not going very good for her. And she fought like a veteran that was coming off a major long layoff, right? In her first fight in the UK versus Veronica Hardy.
Mm-hmm.
And then she faces off against Santos. If you look at Santos's record, she doesn't have that many fights, but she has pretty good finishes. Hey, I got to give respect to Luana Santos. I didn't even know who this girl was. Seriously, until this card came up. It's not like she had was it her debut?
Yeah, this was her. Yeah. This was her UFC debut.
Yeah, it was her debut. And I'm gonna put it out there. I think she's phenomenal looking, right? I thought she was like, bro,
I was waiting for it. I'm like, where is it gonna go with this?
I was shocked. Like, I was like, she's very phenomenal looking, right? I was just like, damn. But yeah, and she could throw them hammers too, man. She's vicious,
That's my
you know.
point. Is that a debutante comes there and just makes Ms. Miller, I mean, look untrained almost. You know, like she unhinged her.
I don't know if I've ever seen odds flip that bad on a fighter. I mean, when she fought Veronica Hardy, Miller was a big favorite in that fight. Like she was like a minus 300 or something in that fight.
Yeah, because they're looking at her last performance against Brogan Walker,
Exactly.
and then looking at Veronica coming off the 3-year layoff, and
Yeah.
they just was like, you know,
That's the
Miller
thing,
looks like
man.
she
If
has
you
some
give,
momentum.
yeah, it just looks like if you give Miller somebody who has any bit of striking knowledge, it's going to be a very rough day in the office for her.
Yeah, that's one thing women have advantage over men. You know, like that's let's just be real. That's one thing women have advantage over men. Is like if a woman is pretty and she's beautiful or whatnot, and she can fight, you remember her, right? Like
Yep.
this, because this is like even fans. Most of the fans of fighting are men.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
you take
yeah.
a
Yeah.
percentage of the men that remember, like now I'll remember Luana Santos, right? Because of the
Well,
fight, but also because like damn, she's
you
pretty
can,
hot, right?
you can flip it the other way. You could go full Kamzat and just get a big old hair lip and just be like,
Yeah, but
remembered
I
for
don't
that.
like I'm
Just
like
kidding.
of course I remember Hamza because of like his performances and like
Monster.
the
Yeah.
mic
Yeah.
skills and all that. But women just have that advantage because it's not like dudes are gonna be like, yeah, what's his name's like he doesn't like he doesn't he like I don't know who he is, but damn, he's a phenomenal looking man. Like you don't remember those guys, right? Like, but for women it's different. I'm just putting it out there. It's just the truth, right? Like, um, even
Yeah.
if
I
but
mean, they can
Luana
take
looks
it
like
if I
she's
build it.
legit though. Like Luana looks like she should be in Miller's position. Like she should have won the Ultimate Fighter and like should have been,
Yeah. She might have
getting
been too
matched
good
up.
to get the Ultimate Fighter call, man. That's the unfortunate part for the Ultimate Fighter. It's just that's not
Exactly.
really the route anymore. Like those prospects are going through Contender Series. They're not going through the Ultimate Fighter.
Or getting signed to other places like John was alluding to earlier.
Yeah,
You know, like
for sure.
we're grateful to be in the time period of MMA where we're in where there's more than one place to catch a check.
All right. Moving on from that, shout out to Luana Santos. We'll be watching closely next time. You know what I mean? We're not gonna hate on him. Terrence McKinney, the
The
boy,
return.
goes on short notice. He's just like, dude, I gotta get this like losing streak. I gotta end this thing. Sicko, what did you think of like
Man,
McKinney? He had that urgency, right? But it didn't seem like he
when
changed
does he
anything.
not? When does he not have that urgency? You know, McKinney always comes ready to go to war. I
Yeah.
was very disappointed in Breeden. You know, I thought McKinney was going to get this one. This is a big step down from the competition that he's had recently. So I thought he was going to get this fight. But Breeden, man, correct me if I'm wrong, guys. If you guys have a different read on this, Breeden looked like he didn't want to be in there, man. As soon as McKinney got his first little combination going, Breeden just shelled up and was like, nope, I want zero part of this. It was just like not throwing anything back, no urgency to move and try to evade it. He just covered up, shelled up, and said, go ahead, man. I'll wait for the finish. Like it was just a really, really bad performance. And I get it, man. When McKinney's coming forward and he's super aggressive like that, I mean, when has he not caught somebody? Right? Even the fights that he's finished people, or the fights that he's been finished, he still caught those guys early. He still had them in trouble at some points in the fight. So, you know, when McKinney comes out, man, that first round, that dude is extremely dangerous in the first round. And yeah, Breeden just unfortunately crumbled under that pressure.
It was like watching that fight live was interesting. And I think that if you didn't know, if you just had like fun, if you just watched the fight, you didn't have previous facts, you didn't know the fighters, and then right after the fight was done, you just said the sentence, "Oh well, you know the guy took the fight on short notice." It would be easy to assume that Mike was the guy on short notice. Like that's how bad the fight played out. It didn't go the way the script is written in any version of the multiverse I've been a part of. So good job for McKinney for bucking the trend and all that, and shaking it up. It was awesome.
I mean, he just crumbled, man. This, you know what this fight reminded me of? It reminded me of the Amanda Nunes and what's her name? Really, really tall. Megan Anderson.
Yeah.
Like the first punch that gets thrown, their eyes are like, I don't want to be in here anymore. Like that's what it looked like for Breeden, man. He didn't even give himself a chance.
Well, the thing is, like the term short notice, we always imply something to the term short notice. Like, oh, McKinney steps in on short notice. But McKinney could have been in camp the whole time, training with somebody that has fights coming up. Like, does that mean it's short notice? Like, short notice means like, yeah,
Exactly.
like they imply so much. Like we always imply so much to short notice. Like we think short notice means that this guy wasn't even training and he's just stepping up and cutting the weight and then he's going in there and fighting, which is
McKinney had just fought, right? Like
exactly,
McKinney's
right?
fight before that, right?
And he's helping Kevin Holland get ready. Like,
yeah.
Did they fight on the same night? I don't know. But
and bro,
there's always something going on with fighters, right? Like there's always something going on at the gym with their team. So short notice, it impacts both fighters, right? We can't just say it impacts McKinney because, to be honest, Breeden, they switched it on him short notice too, and it might have impacted him even worse because he was preparing for one guy the whole time, right? And he's learning combinations, he's learning positioning, he's learning movement, and then he goes in there and they flip it on him and they give him McKinney, who's like a Tasmanian devil. Dude, look at the statistic.
Who was Breeden supposed to fight originally?
Breeden was supposed to fight.
1 second.
Oh, Lando Venata. Which is a guy mostly kick based, right? Like he likes to kick a lot from distance, and then you got McKinney.
Here's my thing,
pressure
man.
guy.
If I don't know who represents Breeden. I don't know if he represents himself or who represents him. Okay, if Breeden is my fighter, and they're like, "Hey, man, Venata pulled out, but we got a replacement," and they go, "It's Terrence McKinney," I'll be like, "Is there anybody else, bro? Like, we had a fight that we weren't so sure about, and you're giving us a guy who is much more dangerous, and a guy who just fought, and he just had a camp. He's not even too far removed from it." Like, that's tough, man. It's very rare when the guy coming in on short notice is even bigger of a favorite than the guy who was going to fight him originally. Like, at some point, man, that's, you know what I mean? That's like, oh, I'm supposed to fight Joe Schmo. Hey, he pulled out, but Hamzat's going to jump in. Like, no, man, I'm not taking that.
I hear that. I guess my reservations was on the side of the point that you guys just made, that Terrence had peaked and was set to be in his peak form when he fought previously the other week. So we've seen fighters do that ultra quick turnaround, and you just, athletically, it's hard to stay at that peak form. You need that cycle of physical recovery and then peak form again. So that's what I was afraid of. I was just like, damn, you're you might be expired. I don't know if you're still in your peak form, but hey, shut me the hell up. Good job, Mr. McKinney.
Well, with Breeden, right? He had been coming off like a long layoff with like multiple injuries, and the thing about him was like he was injured and then he kind of came back too fast and injured himself again, and it prolonged the layoff and the training. And during that time as well, he's one of the original Glory MMA guys, as like he's one of the original like James Krause fighters, and that whole thing blew up, right? So he had to find a new gym. There was a lot of stuff going on with Mike Breeden. And I think like he invested so much on Lando Venata and his return that when they flipped it on him, it was just like, like he had no choice, right? He hasn't fought in years. It's not like he's making money, and it was almost like forced into this matchup against.
I want to know what I would love to like just be a mind reader for that moment. When I want to know who's the first person that told him, "Hey, it's gonna be Terrence McKinney." And I just would love to know what was he really thinking in his head at that moment? Because the way that fight took place, man, I don't want to harp on him too much. Like, who knows? It could have just been, he might have got hit with a really bad shot. He might have been out of it, out on his feet. But it just looked like he went in there with not a lot of confidence.
He only landed one strike, and it was to the body.
47 strikes thrown, and you only throw 5 back.
5 back, one of them.
Up, man.
And then the one body shot, and then, the finish came not too long after. But, yeah, man, it's a trip. Like, Terrence McKinney, he's still so young, dude. What is he? He's what, 28, right? You know what I see in Terrence McKinney? I see Terrence McKinney doing this for about another year, where he's just like fighting whoever, just his style, and eventually, what's going to happen? He's going to figure out like what he needs to do to beat the more like the higher level fighters, the elite fighters, and he's going to become one of them. But until that point, we're going to see Terrence McKinney taking these types of fights and either winning or losing, because he lives by the sword, dies by the sword. That's why we love him. And even if he gets cut by the UFC, Terrence knows there's a lot of other promotions out there that's going to pay him good money to fight. Just because who he is, he's still young, still room to develop into a superstar. And, you know what I mean? And he's built a huge following as well, which is helpful. Yeah. And he's around Kevin Holland, who's probably guiding him, you know, of how to grow himself into a star in this league, in this promotion. And even if it's not in this promotion, he has great representatives with his management to where he can build himself in another promotion. That's one thing. That's a good cushion to have. With McKinney, Breeden, not so much, right? Breeden is a guy that's off 2 back-to-back losses, winless in the UFC, lost his 3rd straight in the UFC. Most likely what's going to happen to a guy that hasn't won any, lost 3 in a row, he's end up what? Getting cut, right? Usually get cut, right? And that's what happens. And if Breeden would have won this fight and McKinney got cut, McKinney would have, I think, more of options.
100%.
Like at a higher level, a bigger organization. Definitely. Compared to a Breeden. Breeden's 34 years old, man. Like, it's hard to come back at that age.
And he fought like he was 44.
Yeah, and a lot of people thought like Breeden, or actually a lot of people think 34 is the age where you drop off, right? If you're not a champion by then,
you got dropped off.
You're not in the heavyweight division. Yeah, it's just like you're journeyman, right?
Got dropped off, bro.
Yeah, dropped off, right? So there you go. Another prospect that fought was Francis Marshall. And he took on Isaac Dalgarian. Isaac Dalgarian, most famous for running away from like literally legit. Was that Isaac Dalgarian?
No, you're thinking about Vergara. They do look kind of similar.
Yeah, they look similar. Yeah,
this dude looks like Vergara and Kyler Matrix. We got together, bro. Somebody.
Isaac Dalgarian, man. I've followed him for a little bit. 5-0, 6-0 now. 27 years old. He's a solid prospect, dude. A good background in wrestling. And Francis Marshall, he's the guy that's the fresh face, the newest edition of what's his name? Chase Hooper, right?
Oh, geez.
But he's not. He's actually skilled. But he didn't do very well against Dalgarian at all, right? He did not do very well against Dalgarian. Man, Dalgarian went in there and implemented a great style, and now Dalgarian is the prospect, undefeated, 1st round knockout. Man, I see a big future for Dalgarian in that division. Martin Boudet gets the 1st round submission against Josh Parisian. Josh Parisian sitting on what is it? He's on like win 1, lose 1, but this time his first back-to-back losses. He's hanging on by a thread in that heavyweight division, but you know what? The heavyweight division, they let you hang on to the tiniest of threads, right? Until they don't like you anymore. Yeah. What is it? We'll go to Sicko for this one.
Yeah, this was a good one.
Ruiz versus Amarim. Amarim goes in there and gets the TKO. I'm pretty sure a lot of people thought it was a submission, but she gets the 1st round TKO or 3rd round TKO finish. What'd you think, Sicko, of this fight? Was it good?
Fluent, man. It was beautiful. It was beautiful if you are a fan of grappling at a high level. Amarim is a legit black belt. She's as legit as they come on the ground, and she showed it. And there were points in time where they were on the ground and she was playing with her, pulling guard, transitioning from a closed guard to a full mount, sweeping into full mount. Like, you don't really see that at this level in the UFC, people going from a closed guard and sweeping their opponent into full mount. And she did that multiple times. I mean, anytime Ruiz would get a little bit of something going on the feet, she would just pull guard and say, hey, get on top of me. Come get on top of me. I know I'm going to sweep you. I know I'm going to threaten with whatever submissions I have. And, yeah, she showed off, and I'm happy for her. Her first fight, she had a lot of hype going in that Sam Hughes fight. A lot of people were giving her that credit and saying, man, if she takes Sam Hughes down, it's going to be over. And she had success in the first round and then gassed out. And Hughes, being the veteran that she was, just put it on her. It was a tough first fight for her. And since then, though, you know, second fight in the UFC, we'll see what you got. And she did exactly what people were expecting her to do in the first round, which is show off that beautiful jiu-jitsu, that Mexican ground karate. She did that beautifully. And yeah, I was surprised that she didn't get the submission. She had an arm bar that looked pretty deep in there, and Ruiz just fought like hell to get out. She threatened with a lot of good submissions, but at the end of it, she just said, "Screw it, I'm gonna go ahead and start raining down some shots and finish with the TKO."
There you go. And then Damar Blackshield gets the twister submission. I believe only the third or fourth submission.
That one
submission
was dope.
in the league. And Jose Johnson, you remember Jose Johnson? He was signed, and then he pulled out a bunch of fights, got cut, and now he got re-signed. And then he loses by twister.
About to get cut again. I don't know if you noticed, John, on that fight. I know Rob, we were in the party together, so we were talking about it. But one thing that Blackshear did that was really, really cool to finish that twister is he used the inside of his own glove to get the grip. He couldn't quite get a Gable grip because of the gloves. S grips are really hard because of the glove, so he just said, screw it, dug inside his own glove and just got the grip like that and got the finish. And I was like, man, people really need to start using that more. Like any position that you're in where it's either a Gable grip or a S grip that you're looking for, just dig your fingers in your own glove. Like that is tighter than anything you're going to see. Like that's impossible to unhook, man.
Yeah, and there you go, man. Blackshear, he's on a little run now.
I love that.
I think he's won like 3 or 4 fights in a row now. So yeah, there you go, man. You just got to build that win streak. Doesn't matter against who, just build it, and then you're building confidence in your resume. And then once you land against the bigger name fighters, you'll be ready to go. All right. So before we get out of here, we're gonna discuss 2 of the rules, 2 new rules that they. Let me get this on the screen real quick. 2 new rules.
Implemented rules.
Yeah, 2 of the implemented rules. Let me read these rules off. Oh, here it is. I hope it works.
Let's hope it works. Come on.
Yeah, so 2 of the rules. Bloody Elbow on Twitter. They put up the 2 rules. Let me see if I could.
Well, while you're looking up for it, I know they're referring to mostly to what the doctors can and can't do after illegal strikes, mostly eye pokes, things of that nature. So it's obviously we know about the 5 minutes that you get whenever there's an eye poke, but it's actually just going to allow doctors to kind of step in and do more than they previously have been allowed to do when those things occur. So if there's an illegal strike like a headbutt or something, clash of heads that opens up a cut, the doctors can come in and actually try to stop the bleeding, to actually, do a little bit more than they were used to doing. And it's just trying to get fighters closer to that 5 minute mark. They're really trying to, persuade the refs to say, hey, really try to get them to use as much of those 5 minutes as they possibly can. I don't know if John, if you got it up yet.
Oh, I don't know. Something's wrong with the stream here. But the 2 new rules, right, for MMA fighters. And MMA fighters and coaches and quartermen, they need to understand these rules so they can utilize them if they need to shout at the referees. Because referees aren't perfect, man. So you got to tell them sometimes if they're doing something wrong, especially the corners. So the first rule is if you accidentally foul result, if an accidental foul, this is what Sika was talking about, foul results in a cut, cut men, cut women are now allowed to enter the ring and treat the wound. So they get to have the 5 minutes, right, to treat the wound to see if like they could do anything. And this is all off of accidental, right? So
right.
The referee, it's up to his discretion. Like, does the referee allow the cutman to come in? But usually you see the referee doing a pretty good job with that. And and I think this is a great idea. You don't, you allow the professionals to heal the wound so we can see the fight continue, because the last thing you want to see is a fight that is stopped due to a cut, and the cut was due to an accidental headbutt, right? We don't want that. We don't want accidents. We want intentional damage. We want intentional violence, right? That's what we want. Anyway, so the second thing is during an eye poke, fighters are given a cold press to use for 60 to 90 seconds before the doctors come in to check the eye, allowing recovery time. I don't think that even really would that even matter to a fighter.
That one seems stupid. That one seems stupid in my opinion. I'm just be honest. Like 60 to 90 seconds of cold compress does absolutely nothing to
I'll tell you why they're doing that, and I'm sure it continues on and says more as to why they're doing that. They're just trying to waste as much time as they can to get closer to the 5-minute mark because they're worried about fighters recently. As soon as there's an eye poke happening, saying, "Nope, I can't see, my vision's impaired," and the fight stops, 40 seconds into the eye poke stoppage, where it's like, is your vision truly impaired, or is it just like you're blurry and it's going to get better? And all they're trying to do is just prolong it a little bit longer. And what I saw, and I don't know if it's on there, John, but what I saw is them saying like the doctors aren't going to come in and ask immediately, can you see, and ask questions about their vision. They're just going to come in and treat it and take a look at it and look at it themselves. And then as they get closer to that 5-minute mark, if the fighter hasn't decided to go themselves, then they'll start, giving those vision tests or asking them about their vision itself. But only as they get closer to the 5-minute mark.
Are these rules going to have a huge impact on like what's going down in the? I think they will. You just have to be able to utilize it to your advantage, right? And I think coaches, that's one thing. Coaches, they need to study the rules and like the process and the protocol during a fight, and where you're at fighting as well. You know what I mean? Every commission has different rules. It seems like take advantage of it, but making more rules, I think it's a great thing. You know what I mean? Because then you could get rid of the old rules that don't make any goddamn sense and that should not even be utilized at this point, especially 12 to 6 elbows and stupid things like that were established years ago.
Well, I guess to that point, John, I'm kind of like, who gives a shit about this? Because while you guys wasting your point on all these little minor details that doesn't affect stuff, I don't really know. I think when we see eye pokes, the ones that are like clear and obvious, like, yeah, that fighter should not be fighting, they don't fight. And the guys who can, well, they warrior it up and they wait the 5 minutes and then they get back to fighting. I think this is a lot of great effort, and thank you to whoever put the thought into this topic. But I think there's other areas in MMA that need a think tank and emphasis put on it versus like the eye poke protocol. I don't know. Seems like wasted effort to me.
Well, yeah, hey, man, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that have that same opinion. It could be a waste of time. It could be, because new rules could lead to new problems as well. I mean, it's never a perfect solution to everything, right?
Just think about this, and now I'm just making a hypothetical situation. But sometimes we get fights. Every once in a while, we get a fight that's just plagued with the eye poke bug. So, and none of those fights get canceled because the eye poke bug. Just there's lots of fights with eye pokes. So you're going to add 5 more minutes into all of those fights. That sometimes you have it like that. Once again, speculating. Good luck to all the fighters. Hope you don't get poked in the eye. That's my final message.
There you go. Sure. Rob doesn't want people to get poked in the eye. That's the final message. Sicko, anything to add to the new rules?
Just give them safety goggles, man.
Yeah. Well, Sicko and me are wearing safety goggles at
you poking my eyes.
You know what I mean? There ain't no poking my eyes. You know what I mean?
Either that or you're gonna start seeing this guard right here.
When dust starts flying around, when sand starts flying around and people are complaining and you're thinking like, why didn't they just wear their protective goggles like I am right now? You know what I mean? Like it helps. I'm telling you, it helps. Anyways, everybody that joined us live, appreciate it. If you're listening to the replay, make sure you guys subscribe, like, share, all of that good stuff. Go in the descriptions, download the AllStar app, join the league, make your UFC picks every week. The league, J-Spec is running. Sicko is there making picks. I'm making picks as well every week. Yeah. I'm not in the league, but I'm making picks. I'm on the app, checking out what's going on. If there's any problems with the app, go into the settings and send an email to the company, and we will fix it as soon as possible, ASAP. Thank you guys so much. And Sicko, J-Spec will be speaking next week. Boston, I believe.
And you,
Right?
baby.
And
And
new.
you.
Okay, sick.
Let's
We're
go.
gonna leave it right there. We're gonna leave it right there. He says and new. So we'll see next week if that comes to reality. Peace out, love, and